represent. We do not send out an attendance sheet, so please empower yourself to jot down names and agencies. And also want to say that any of the comments made today are non-binding on to the formal review of the plans, just because our team hasn't really had a time to analyze this. So it'll be pretty high end of what you can and cannot do and what requirements need to be met at the site. After I'm through with my introductions, I also want to say we do not take meeting notes also either. After I'm done with my introductions, I'll turn it over to Beverly and Cody to introduce yourselves and to briefly tell us what you're doing at this site. And if you possibly have something to share on the screen, that would be great. After you're done, I will facilitate what we call the virtual round the table, where the various agencies will spell out their requirements and also allow you the opportunity to ask any questions. So if that all makes sense, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome, good afternoon. I'm Nan Peterson. I'm with the Planning Department. Joining me this afternoon is Emily Chin. Emily is with Stormwater. Lisa McCarter, Zoning. Mary Probst, Urban Forestry. Kirsty Sanchez, Zoning. Chris Saunders, Charlotte Water. Isaiah Washington is with CDOT, Charlotte Department of Transportation. Frank Wilkinson, Zoning. Jeff Wright is with City Fire. So Beverly and Cody, you want to introduce yourselves and briefly tell us what you're planning to do at the site?
All right. Let's see. Make sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So the A Brighter Day Community Hub is a centralized location for the residents in the Hoskins and Thomasboro area, as well as anyone nearby, or it doesn't matter. They can come here and get resource that normally they would not have access to readily. So we have a plethora of resources here that they can come and get information about anything from Habitat for Humanities to funeral services to whatever. It's all here at the hub. We also have a computer lab that has enough for four, maybe five youth to come in at one time, and also to learn from any resource that may just come here and be on the screen and allow others to join via Zoom. So we have that as well, and then our mental health room where we've opened it up for mental health resources to come into the community to provide their services, as well as for de-escalation for our youth before it escalates to something that they can't turn around. That is what we're offering here internally to the hub. We just completed the food pantry, which is another huge need in this food desert. There are no grocery stores for miles, so we have been addressing that as well. So there are lots of opportunities here at the hub. It's been something that we've worked on for quite a while and have been here for a year in August. And so it's just been a real blessing to so many. And we hope to be able to continue to move forward and figure all of this out so that we're in compliance.
Wonderful. Cody, you want to introduce yourselves and maybe tell us exactly what you're planning to do at the site?
Sure. Well, hey everybody, thanks for your time today. I am a draftsman and designer. I graduated from architecture school, but I never got my license. And I do mostly residential projects. But my uncle is friends with Beverly and just recommended me, reached out to me to try and help with this project. At first I kind of figured it would just be doing drawings of the existing conditions and then maybe adding some notes to try and get the zoning changes that need to happen. And so that wasn't the case. So we're here to just try and figure everything out, kind of just help them get back to doing their community work that they're doing. So that's what we're trying to do.
understanding you want to build like some ADA ramps. Is that correct?
That is correct. So just to give a little bit of history, when we started down this path of, you know what, having a community center may be difficult because of real estate. Let's look at, just turning a residential property into a community hub. So, us being very green, we reached out to the city to figure out, what do we do, you know, and are we compliant in being able to do that? So that's where I reached out to Lisa McCarter. She gave us the green light from a zoning perspective that we were compliant in having a community hub and our status being residential. So I know she passed the baton to Brent in regards to making sure that everything had been covered, and we didn't hear anything else back. So we moved forward with the purchase. Hadn't heard anything in a year, and then we got the Lowe's Hometown Grant to build the food pantry. And once the permit was pulled, everything blew up at that point because the county then said, "Oh no, we don't agree. You are out of compliance." So we received a citation from the county, and the county determined that we needed to be commercial, not residential. So that's kind of where it all began, the back and forth, and I had to get some folks involved to kind of help me navigate this because we were just unaware. And so they have allowed the food pantry to complete its inspections as residential, but we'll need to come back now that they want us to shift to a commercial status. So that's how we ended up here, and just trying to make sure we figure out a happy medium between the city and the county where we're compliant with both, but it just seems really difficult for.
Well, yeah, we understand, and that's what we're trying to hear to sort this out. Just so in my mind, when you say the food pantry, is that now inside the existing structure?
No.
Is it one of these units?
Yes, it's separate from the house. Even though we've built the decking here, it is not attached to the house. It's separate and apart from. Yeah.
And is the food pantry in this shed or this back building?
It's the one that's on the decking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was it. Okay. Just so we all understand what's built and what's going on.
Okay.
So why don't we go ahead and get started? And Brent, I'll turn it over to you from the zoning perspective, or whoever else from your team is going to take the lead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nan. Hello, everyone. So just to start with the uses, I know, Beverly, we've talked about the community use and the food pantry are both uses allowed in the N1C zoning district. The community center is an institutional government use, and then the food pantry is the public health and social services use. So I'm going to kind of step through what some of those zoning requirements are going to be based on those proposed uses that are allowed. So the accessory structure, which we're calling the food pantry, that's how it would fall under the zoning ordinance or the UDO. It has location requirements. So Article 17 of the UDO is what you guys are going to want to refer to, where it talks about the placement of that structure on the property. It talks about how far it needs to be from your side property lines and your rear property lines. So we'll, just like I said, point you to Article 17, and once you guys dig into that, if you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you. So that's going to kind of deal with the location of that new structure. Parking, there's parking requirements. Article 19, 19.1. You're in parking tier number 1. And those parking requirements is 1 parking space per 750 square feet of gross floor area. And that's going to be for both the community center and the food pantry, those areas together. So it's 1 space per 750 square feet. There could be bike parking required. It just depends on the amount of square footage within that accessory structure, the food pantry. The bike parking is one space per 1,500 square feet of gross floor area. And again, without kind of knowing what those numbers are, it would be hard for me to tell you, what the number of spaces required, if any, are required.
And that was one space per how many square?
1,500 square feet.
Okay.
And that would be for both the community center and the food pantry. And then there is a internal sidewalk connection that would be required out to the public street. And that's per section 16, or I'm sorry, Article 16 of the UDO. So there's specific language in there that talks about that sidewalk connection. The other thing I have is if there's any on-site utilities that are going to be required, for example, backflow preventers or whatnot, there are locational and screening requirements for those. But we won't really know, if those are required. Again, I can help you with where those would need to be placed on the site. And that article of the UDO is Article 15 that talks about utilities and the screening of those. And then the last thing I have is landscape yards are required because this is a non-residential use of budding residential uses. You have landscape yards. Those are planted areas that would be along your sides and rear property lines, and those are Class B 25-foot landscape yards. We may have to work with you guys on that because there's a variance process, because right now with the way the site is laid out, you're not going to be able to meet that 25 feet. John Kinley, I'm not sure if he was able to join us or not. John works with the board that deals with variances, and I'll be happy to work with you and John on that requirement. But again, those are 25-foot Class B landscape yards. So that's all I have. There could be more depending on kind of once we get into the meat of it, but that's kind of some high-level requirements that I have to pass along.